welcome to our space. Thank you very much for coming. This is the Rosemary McGee Creativity Conversation, and there are a lot of phenomenal conversations that we've had with artists, and so I'm really honored and excited to talk with Dafi Altabeb and tell you a little bit about how she's here, really. We have been wanting to have a semester-long residency with a guest artist for a while, and it's pretty challenging to have that with an international artist. So we partnered with the Israel Institute in DC, and also I wrote a grant with the Schwartz Center, the Don and Marvin Schwartz Center residency grant. And putting those two things together financially brought Dafi here. Also, yes, we couldn't have done it without that. But I also want to thank Kendall Simpson, because it was our first international artist. He worked really hard on her J1 visa. And really the whole thing started because Greg had gone, Cavalier, my colleague, had gone to Israel. And it's kind of a festival where you're looking at a lot of companies to decide on booking artists. And when he saw her work, he was really moved by it. And he came back to describe the work to us. And we were just all sold and excited to meet her. She is a choreographer, a musician, so we're going to step into that a little bit too, and a teacher. And we share a lot of similar philosophical things about how we teach. So I'm interested in how we might step into that in our conversation. So, one of the things I've noticed about her since she's gotten here, and that we just started to get to know each other then, is she's a real observer of movement. She's always looking at it, and that's what feeds all of it. So I was curious, have you always been an observer of movement? Is that just your nature, or?
I didn't define myself ever, I think, as an observer of movement, but I think that I can say about myself in the at least like 5, 6 years that this is the engine of what brings my desire to create or brings the ideas to a new piece. Even if I come with something with an idea that is probably very raw, usually observing dancers or people that deal with movement is something that brings so much information that wasn't there. And actually now when I'm thinking about the question even more, in the audition, in the first one that we had here, I was thinking to myself that I can plan so much, and I was like chewing what I'm gonna do, and writing and thinking, and over too much thinking before I even arrived. But to think about it so much before you see it, I felt when I sat here that it's like it was such a waste of time, because this is what is moving me. Like all of the ideas are coming just when I'm in front of people that are moving, and sitting and planning, like the benefit of just being around it is everything comes up, like the same like sitting in your class, not thinking about something, and you just see people move and ideas comes up.
Tell us a little bit about how you became a choreographer. So you just were sharing with me that I was a Girl Scout, but she's going to tell you about being a scout and then what that led to and what that led to college and everything. Yeah.
So I think that I was imitating dance as a child a lot. Like I was like placing a ladder at home and climbing and like creating dance on top of it, like showing in front of the television, Olympic Games, trying to imitate what they're doing. It was something that was very much in like what I wanted to do, with no, didn't have like any area of dancing around me. Very creative people and parents, but not specifically dancing. And I was like, we don't separate scouts to boys and girls. We just everyone together. And I told Lori that this is all the action that you have, like everyone around you. And we had a very important festival that happened just in the city that I grew, and it's like familiar in all Israel, like this specific festival that the adults are creating either like a singing structure for the youngers or a dance piece, and it has to have a subject, and you pick the music, and the parents are creating the costumes, and it really like intrigued me since I was, I think, like I was participating it when I was younger, but I really wanted to create already for the younger when I started to be like 15 or something like this, and it was a competition. It happens like in the last holiday of the year in Israel. Everyone comes to see it, and it's very like stressful because you compete others, and I did it since I was 15, taking it very, very seriously. Like we were staying until like 12 o'clock at night to create the set for like one show, and I was winning. I am very happy to say that I was winning because it wasn't so easy in my real career. I wasn't winning so fast. And I continued just doing it and doing it, even like afterwards I had to go to the army, and I wasn't in the scouts anymore because you finish it when you are 18, but I came back continuing like creating for like 15 years old, 16 years old, and this I feel that's something that really defined my desire to choreograph. I was like working at home, writing what we will do in the next rehearsal. Like everything was like on the pavement, like no like real space for dance, but still very serious. So I think that this was like something that really moved me to understand my big desire. And after wishing to be a vet, when I finished the army, I really wanted to be a vet, and my parents told me like, we think that you too much like animals to be a vet, so maybe choose something else. And I chose that, and I feel that also my entering to college was not because I was such a big technician, because my background wasn't like so good when I entered the college, but the composition was very, very strong from the beginning, and the college really helped me to progress and be better, and like to take the skill and to take the potential and just make it like bigger. And I can even say that when I finished college, there was like sort of workshop that you get credit for when you come back after you graduate. And I came back after 2 years, and the teacher that I met there was the first one that told me like, go to make an audition with your piece. And this was my first piece that was like out of the college, and since then it just continues. So I feel that the college was like a very big push for seeing like the potential and helping it to develop.
I read a little bit about this college and program, and your emphasis was composition, and it also said notation.
Yes.
Yes. Can you say a little about, because what notation is here? Some of the students study it, and what is it there?
Notation, you mean like Laban?
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't know if it was Laban notation or not.
We are studying like, I don't know if it's familiar here or someone knows the name of Eshkol Wachman. There is like 2 different systems, and we all have to study composition and this like writing skills of movement in our first 2 years, and after that we can choose either we go to this direction or to that direction or both. And I took both, although composition was my favorite, but I felt that this one was very intriguing me for like something mathematical that help in other ways of like coordination. And if I can, I don't have a lot what to say about it because it wasn't like my favorite. But I felt that in terms of knowledge, it gave me a lot. I continue afterward coming to shows that they have like performances also. And I think like watching it is less having an impact on me than doing it, because it was very, very intriguing for the coordination and develop something that when you don't practice it day to day, it's gone. And I'm not practicing these days.
Perhaps Israel has a movement identity itself, or I've never been to Israel, so maybe we have this impression of it with the companies we have seen, or we're familiar with Batsheva or Vertigo or Kibbutz. Where do you feel your work fits into that? Is it very different from that? Or how would you even describe Israeli dance, contemporary dance? That's sort of the two questions.
Okay, so I'll go for the first one. We performed 5 years ago or 4 years ago in Siberia with a duet of mine. And in the end of the performance, like a dancer that he is also a choreographer that was performing also there came to me after the show. We didn't meet each other. And he was like, wow, it doesn't look like anything that I see or that I saw until now. And he was very familiar of like Batsheva, Kibutzim, Kibbutzit, Vertigo, and some others. And I didn't think about myself until then like that, but I started to understand that because I wasn't a dancer in one of these companies that has a big impact on your body, on the way you move. So nothing stayed with me. I wasn't passing the regular system of being a dancer and then becoming a choreographer. I wasn't a dancer in a company. I was dancing for choreographers, and they did have an impact on me. But since 2010, I'm not dancing my own pieces. So it's not about how I move. It's about what I choose from other people and how do I make a cake from that. So it doesn't look like others. It looks like what people are bringing into my pieces. Still, they will all have something in common that I can't define in words, except that they are very emotional and they have a specific style, how I start a piece, how I finish a piece. But it's not defined. I'm not a gaga mover. And in Israel, you can really see, and I can also see when I take dancers to work for me, like to create a piece with me, that where do they come from, because it's very present on the body. I think that what is more interesting for me is like how do they take these high skills, because they were part of these companies that trained them very, very good. I can just take the hat off and say how good they are when they go out from these companies. But mostly what is interesting for me is those people that can take this layer of like moving only in this specific way and just use all their skills that are so developed to create whatever they want. And the second one was like how can I define an Israeli dance?
Well, maybe there's not sort of blanket descriptions of it. Maybe do you find that the companies, as well as your work, they're just like here, there's very unique, that you're all unique, or there's a way that you think people see Israeli dance?
It's hard, like I can answer about it, but it will be also interesting to hear from you. What do you define as Israeli dance? And I don't know if we think the same, but I feel that there is something common between how Israelis behave. it can be from being very open to being rude to being like there are no borders almost between us, like hugging and touching, and everything is very crowded. We don't have like the same space that I observe here and other places that I've been in the States. So it defines something very close between people that sometimes like is like too much, but this is how I grow, this is how I'm used to, and I feel that there is something about that that is not looking for a definition of pretty or it, how does it look and how does it feel, and my intuition to say how does it feel, because there is something in Israel that is like so hard and like and so hot and so sweaty and like, and it's difficult. Yes, it's difficult, but I think that the difficulty is creating something very intense, and almost like all the dances that I can recognize with are intense in some way.
Are your dances intense?
I think that they are moving. They were very intense in the beginning of my career. There is something emotional intense in them. I remember showing a rehearsal during the process last year in the ADF, and we had the Israeli consul sitting watching because she couldn't arrive to the performance. And there was this text that the dancers that I'm working with here could hear, and you could hear about it. And it was going even further more to exposing. And I didn't feel that she has any problem with that, but this what was staying with her, like how exposed it is, and how she's not used to hearing like such a personal story so exposed, using any kind of words that needed to demonstrate it. I don't know if I can say about my pieces if they are like, what was the word that we were? Intense. I think that others should define if they are intense for them. Like, yes, I think that most of them, like, they will use like
Physically, yeah.
Physically, they will. Like, I love to see like sweat going like on the air when you see a dance, like. And I like to see human beings on stage. I want to take off all the layers that they wish to be like very beautiful on stage. Like I don't want people to go out of the show and say, "Wow, it was so beautiful." And
well, that is what Greg saw. He saw the human beings that are on stage. I want you to tell them a little bit about how dance functions kind of in Israel, or how your company does. It's called Dafi Dance Group. And I encourage you to go to her website because it's really interesting. Each dancer talks to you. There's a little video, and you really meet each dancer, which is a little different than some of the websites we have here. Just how you find your dancers. They're freelance artists. How does that work in Israel? How do you survive as a choreographer there? How is it supported by the government? All of those things.
Okay, stop me because
Okay.
it's like can be like 2 hours
what feels
complaining of how it works in Israel.
What feels important to share, I guess, in how we function here as artists, and how do you function there?
I must say a note and to thank you for choosing me to be here, because the year that you saw the piece, like we have like this event called International Exposure. It happens once a year. Everyone wants to be part of it. You need to like sort of audition for that. They come to see the pieces that you premiere the same year. It has to be a new piece. It has to perform a certain amount of times before it's accepted to international exposure, and it has like a deadline that until the 30th of September, a piece that wasn't premiered until this date, for example, cannot be applied. But everyone wants to be, because like this is our ticket to show our culture to everyone that comes, and it's a very, very good one. It's arranged good, and it's hard for the curators, but it's a good one. And the year that you came was actually a year that I applied with a piece that I already showed a year before. But a year before, I was like chosen to do it in a day that everyone was very tired and many didn't arrive, and I was like begging, please allow me to do it, even in a studio, no lighting, it doesn't matter to me, just let me show it again. It was like a very exceptional, and they said yes. So I'm very lucky that it was a yes this year, even if it was for very little amount of people, because it could still like affect how it works for me. Like there are companies in Israel, again, we will say Batsheva, which is the biggest one, biggest in terms of like how many dancers are there. There is the company, they have the ensemble that works as a company that perform abroad, that perform in Israel, and their dancers are paid like in like salaries, and they have like all the insurance that they need. And most of the time, people that work for this company and others like Vertigo, like the Kibutzit, there is like also in Bal Pinto's company, most of them cannot do other projects because when they finish the rehearsal, they have no more energy to do anything else, and they work every day. And what defines a company? A company is like their budget, like how much they are supported from the government. And this is a huge subject by itself of like what creates your budget is like how many times you perform, where do you perform, like the Israeli government really support performing outside of the center. Like if Tel Aviv is the center, so perform more, you will get more credit, you will get more budget. But it's like a different subject that needs 4 hours talking. So I said that so you understand that what is not a company is defined by its budget. How much do you get from the government? If at all, you can be an independent choreographer, not get budget from the government, and still create. Like there is like other institute like the Lori Foundation, the Municipality of Tel-Aviv that can give you like some to create. I feel that for me, I define myself like a group or a company. I define myself a company because of the way I work, because I work the whole year. My budget will not show it, but the way I work shows it. And the dancers that I will work do not work in companies, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to work with them. So they are freelancers too. And after they finish working with me, they will go to another rehearsal, and sometimes to another one. Or they will have rehearsal in the morning and go to teach afternoon. Most of the independent choreographers also depending on how much budget do they have, we do pay our dancers. So sometimes like I go to a project not because I have enough budget. I took 8 dancers, is because I really want to do a piece of 8 dancers, and I believe that it will be okay. It's not in the end, it wasn't, but it's like a choice. It's like a choice of, okay, I work, I make workshops, I invest my money in that, in creating a piece of 8 dancers, or I live more normal, and I finish the month. So my choices until now was like to just continue doing the art as I want, and not because of how I'm gonna get paid, and I can do it because I have a very, very big support from my family and my partner for life, and it's not taken for granted. And we work it's like a project because of the way the rehearsals work, because if I now created a men's duet, so I was checking if these two men that I want to work with are free from March till July. We worked every day. We booked the studios like we were every day in a different area, a different space, but still did it in advance, so we are not gonna stuck, it's Wednesday, we don't have a place to work. So it's like in advance planned to have like space for all the rehearsals until the premiere. And then I premiered it with them like in the middle of August. And from the minute that the show is like, the performance is premiering, I don't meet them every day. Then they don't meet me every day, they're going to their next project. But every time before a show, I'll meet them. We will rehearse if we want to change something. So usually in the first 10 shows after the premiere, there are still stuff that I want to change. So we will do more rehearsals before that. And then like we are performing abroad, we will meet for a week before the performance. We fly, we perform, we go back. And then I will not meet them again. So, for example, the piece that we performed now in Brussels before I arrived here, I didn't meet them since January. So it was like, everybody please, like move the engine in your brain to remember. Everything is like in the body, I'm not worried. We met just 3 times and everything was okay. But it's challenging. The more people you have, it's more challenging because usually I work with dancers that are like very, very qualified, so they're working with so many choreographers. So it's like trying to make a puzzle with their schedule, and especially after we premiere, their schedule is not mine anymore. So it's like having like sort of a Sudoku how to make a rehearsal. But the more that you do it in advance, the more it's possible. And we do perform almost like every month and a half, 2 months, and there is many workshops going on through the year, like teaching the piece for this dance school for dancers, or for high school where they have a major in dance, or just giving like individual workshop from time to time. But there is a lot of going on, like my communication with them is during the whole year. Meeting with them will be every time before a show, and this is how it works, if I covered everything.
Yeah. Let's step into one of the pieces. Either Soon We'll Make Lots of Love, that duet is a new piece, yes, or the Emory, the work that you're starting with the Emory Dance Company, those 8 amazing movers, and just help them understand your process a little bit, or topics that become interesting to you, whatever. Use one of those pieces, I guess, to tell them more about how you make dances. Yeah.
Okay. There is something that runs in my head for all of us. There is something that runs in our head, and if we just like think for a while, we can understand what is this thing that mostly we think about, mostly we want to work on ourselves in this subject, and then this subject will probably, everything that you read or walk in the street, it reminds me again how I deal with this subject. So, for example, the piece that Greg saw in International Exposure, I was just becoming a mother, and Sophia was in the carrier or in my hands all the time. And I knew that I want to start a piece, and it's not like I need to start a piece, what will it be about? There is something very present in the now, so this thing was just like understanding I remember that I had a conversation with someone in the cafe in Tel Aviv, and I'm talking, and after a while I even forgot that I'm holding her, because she was all the time on me, with me, going with me here, there, everywhere. And I took this sensation, this very strong feeling that is in the body. It's not in my brain. It's like something very physical, something that sometimes is very painful to all the time carry someone, even if it's like a small one, but all the time. That you're like your hand, like all the time, I couldn't like even release them anymore, or sleeping in different variation because she's on me like this. And so I took this physical strong feeling, and I started playing with that in the studio with no connotation of being a mother. Just there was a very small dancer that I wanted to work for a long time, and she jumped to my head, and I asked her, and I didn't look for someone that is small because I wanted a baby. I wanted like to take the image, and for that I wanted someone tall and someone small, so she could be carried in many variations, but not as his child. And I think that I even brought the meaning of why I choose to do it later in the process, and for them it could be a couple, and it could be so many others. And for people that went to the show, no one thought that it's like a father and a child. No one, and I didn't intend that it will be. This was for me, and it was enough. And for the audience, I took this physical, and it was talking about like depending on someone that I feel that is present in all my pieces. Like probably it's not solved in my personality, so I treat it like in every different angle. And so there is something that goes in my head, and I write words that connected to it, or there is a song that jumps to my head, and then I read the words, and I suddenly speaks the same of what I want to speak about. And usually it's like very human issues, like they are not political, because I have no idea in politics, and I don't watch television, and they're less like global in terms of the world. They're global in terms of like everyone can recognize with this feeling, because everyone, even if they are not this kind of person, they know this kind of person. And I talk a lot in the beginning of a process, and I try to give as many words that I can to allow the dancers start improvising from this information. And I want to hear really in the beginning what the other people that I'm working with has to say about this subject. And otherwise it will stay like, if it's 8 dancers a piece, it will stay as 8 Dafi on stage. And I want to bring individual stories that will be translated to individual movements that will go through a strainer, and through this strainer I will say this no, this yes, this no, this yes, and I can't say why I choose this and this not. Like this I didn't define to myself why. It just caught me, and from some reason I already know that this movement of Joe will go great with this movement of Hayden and with this movement of Ariana, and I don't know how to say why. It just something runs in the head. And I think that there is, the way that I work is like taking, after explaining and talking about the subject and trying to move and going back to talking, because what we said was not accurate enough. Because it's like every time that I meet dancers, it's like, and I'm saying it a lot in the rehearsal, it's defining a language. It's very easy for me to work with dancers that I've already worked, because I can enter to the studio and I can say, like, there is a very familiar dish in Israel called burekas. I can say burekas and she will know what to do, because She already lives in my head. I work with her so many times. I tell her I want it to be more blah, blah, blah. She knows what to do. Let's try this. She knows, and she will deliver exactly what I need. So to enter and start working with new dancers, what I started to do since 2017, which is fascinating because it just forced me to be more clear. The more that I'm trying, I manage to define what I look for by saying this no, this no, this no, this yes, and then going back to the dancer and let's try to understand what is it, this yes. Because I can say it contains a lot of force and he will say, but I'm not using a lot of force. Okay, so what is it? And what is it for you emotionally? And then a language starts to build up, and then I will send the dancer to create something in this atmosphere from this soundtrack or from a very specific sentence that I gave him, and he will come back with the result, and then it starts to be interesting because then I can start, it's like to take a dough and start working with it, changing, putting flavor, cutting it in different ways, and I feel that in the end, there is something very, very present from what the dancer brought, but it's really, really mine, not in an obsessive way of being mine, but I can really stand behind every second of his movement and know why we did it like this and why this length and like why this musicality, and then I feel that it's my piece in the end because it has a very specific style of how I count stuff, and sometimes I want to be like aware of my own way when I see others' pieces, but I can't go away. This is like my style. And then there will start to be chunks that we will observe them and try to start creating sort of a puzzle. And I'll go back to my last piece that Lori was mentioning, Soon We'll Make Lots of Love. It was actually really not this name. It was like Boys Don't Cry. This is how I called it in the beginning. And this was the information that I had in my head, that boys don't cry. And this is why I wanted to create it. I wanted to work with two men. I wanted a men duet. I've never worked just with men in the studio. And during the process, I understood that there is very in the beginning, I understood that giving them this information is nothing, like we can't work with it. And we started to have how do you say it, like fragments or movements that defines men. And I was like, okay, this is really not what I wish to present. And it took a while to understand that it's not going to be a man piece because I'm not a man, I'm a woman. So it's going to be how I think men behave or react or feel or doesn't show what they feel in compared to myself, that I feel that I am super showing my emotions. And step by step, I feel that during a process, there is something like that you take a pencil and you do like this to make it like sharper. And this is the magic point in the process to understand what the piece is about. And if it's something that is not connected to me, I can't do it. I can't do it if it's not related also to me. I can't give them information. And for example, this men duet, I've asked them to, in order to allow them express their emotion, I made a very simple exercise that wasn't my invention. I consulted with someone from theater, and they were needing to lean on stuff. This is what I'm teaching in the modern 4 technique. And they had to say what they are leaning on, really, like I'm leaning on the floor, or I'm leaning on the wall, or I'm leaning on the chair. And after a while, they had to say something else that they lean on, but not the physical thing. And then things started to go out. Who do you really lean? And it was like very funny for a long time until you allow yourself to go deeper and really say who you're leaning on. And if you're not saying it, why don't you share who you're leaning on? And I have like these 2 characters in the piece, that one is sharing and one is not. And it's not that I invent them. This is how I got them. This is who they are. And I usually go with the person itself, just trying to emphasize more and more who he is, and checking, am I inventing a character to you, or this is you? And towards the end of the process, when they were talking their personal stuff, I felt that it still doesn't go to something very personal. And we did like many exercises by writing. And I understood that if I will not share who am I leaning on, or what are my fantasies, or what are the things that I want but I don't have them, and I'm sad that I don't have them, or I really desire to have them but I still don't have them, they will not say it. And the minute that I started doing it, it was like a river. Everything came out, and then I started connecting to the piece again. And this is how it's going to work here with the company. And today a song came to my head, and it was like I can really like for myself, like which music I'm going to use, and it's not coming. But during the day, so many things are coming, and I was asking myself, why did I ask them to do this mission of writing? I still don't have a clear answer, but immediately like a song came. And when a song comes, something else in the puzzle is starting to be clear. And every rehearsal, and with that I will finish, I tell myself in every piece that it's okay that I don't know how it's going to look, what it's going to be. And I'm telling it to myself usually to relax myself, because it's like, I had 13 weeks to create the piece with 2 rehearsals in a week, 1.5 hours, and now I have less, and I still don't know what's the piece about, and I still didn't like do it, and I was sitting in your rehearsal like, she has so much material, I have nothing. and I just say to myself, it's okay. If you want to invent something new, you have to be like 99% of the time in a zone of not knowing. Otherwise, I'm doing the same. And I think that I'm now convinced that I'm not going to recreate something that I created, because I felt emotionally not connected to it anymore. I love the piece, but I can't make a drive on that if I'm not there anymore. So it's like being in a very fun zone, but very scary and fragile zone of not knowing, and not knowing if it will be ready until the end. But it will, because it always happens.
We're getting towards the end of me asking you questions so that they can ask you some, but I do think that I asked you earlier, what kind of musician are you? And I do want you to tell them, because you surprised me with your answer.
I played in a band of harmonica for 12 years. Like, this was like the beginning of how I relate to art, I feel. And it was a very serious one. We were like performing abroad and in Israel. It was like a band, a legacy band that was related to the Holocaust. Like the person that was the conductor was a person that was a survival. So it has this taste, and it had this atmosphere, and we mostly visited places that were connected to that. And it gave me a lot in terms of musicality and also to have like sort of like a discipline with myself. But it also gave me a lot to understand which teacher I don't want to be. And it took me a while. I was teaching small children like after I finished the college, and I felt immediately that I'm the same teacher that I had for many years. It took me a while to like, oh no, I don't want to be this kind of teacher. It was all like old-fashioned in that period. The awareness wasn't so high of like how to teach children. And it's part of me. I play now for fun, but there is something that stayed in the past. I still have it with me almost everywhere, and I enjoy playing at home, but not more than that.
Well, let's open it up so that you can ask Dafi some questions or comment on anything that maybe you want to step into it more.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If for people that works with me or for others that are sitting in the audience, do you feel that you can define, how can you define Israeli dance if you ever had the chance to watch it?
I guess my preconceived notion at first was that Gaga was like the dance of Israel. But after some research, I realized that there's like many different sub-categories.
So first, like Gaga was defining Israeli dance.
I think of it as complete and thorough because one thing that I admire about Israeli dance is that it has the opportunity to be produced and then seen again and again, and it's expected. And so with that longevity of an idea, whether it's one that's developed with physicality or intellectual approaches or a combination of the two, that continued research seems to underscore it, and that doesn't seem to have some of the excess that you might expect from some dance, in any dance, but it feels it gets to the point and it lives inside the point until the point is over and then it goes away. And it's a privilege, I think. You don't often get that.
Because usually pieces here, how long do they survive?
3 days.
Not in Emory,
Yeah.
in the States. Also 3 days? Wow.
Yeah. One in 2016, Core Performance Company, we partnered with them, and we had a number of Israeli companies or artists that did what you did, set work. One of the things I noticed with Niv and Oren's work was there was a lot of repetition in the work of the material will repeat itself somehow in terms of that patterning creates kind of a physical intensity that drives the piece. And I did see that feature in all of the work, and I thought, well, that's kind of, interesting about these choreographers. Yeah.
I also repeat a lot. I wonder if it's something that we are being taught, or
It was satisfying.
no. I know, and I know which piece probably you're talking about. But this piece also contains like a march, like.
Yes.
And I feel that if you go, even if you're not in the army, you see it so many times, so maybe this repetition comes from there. Also, our folklore dances are very present in our lives. Like I was in a folklore dance company, and it contains a lot of repetition, like all our hora dances, and it's something very common in Israel.
How I would kind of see it or characterize it is actually related to something that you said earlier, this idea of Israel is small and the U.S. is not small. And that there's this sense of concentrated awareness within the dance community that that you don't necessarily see within the U.S. You might see in little pockets of like Atlanta or New York or Chicago or whatever, but there's within the U.S. there's just so many different cultures from the West Coast to the East Coast, to the North to the South, and our very complicated history that what I get from Israeli dance is that it is about more of a concentrated sensibility or a vitalness that we may not feel or see here.
Your company's also toured Korea, China, Brazil. What do you enjoy sharing the most about your culture, I guess, or as an artist with other people?
I feel that in general, performing outside of Israel, Israel is so small, Tel Aviv is so small, the dance audience, it's like before a show, it's like, she's gonna come, he's gonna come, like you like have almost like 70% of the audience are people that you know. And it's very stressful because then people are talking. It's not that it's not happening here, but bringing your piece to a natural place that you don't have this like, what do they think about me in advance, and what was written about me. Like there are like many critics and review in Israel that I must say that when I got reviews here, it was less like, okay, she didn't understand me, but there is something of, it's very personal in Israel. It's very personal in Tel Aviv. Everyone knows everyone. Bringing your piece to a new place is seeing your piece from a natural place. And when I see people moved or touched from something that I brought, it's even more exciting, not because I don't appreciate the Israeli audience, it's because again, I will go back to Siberia, because for a woman in Siberia to cry for my piece, it was like very moving, because I don't feel that we share the same language, even if there are no words in but still we do, probably because it was human enough to touch her. So I feel that it's to come to a very clean zero point when you place your piece abroad, and it's a very nice feeling.
Other questions or thoughts?
What about movement or dance or choreography are you like most curious about right now, or you're researching, and why?
I'm very curious in creating for a big amount of people. There is something that moves me in terms of composition, of many people doing many different things, and still there is something that collects them all together. Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not a person that I don't watch YouTube. I don't search for. I don't read about other choreographers. Like I go to shows. In the last few years, a little bit less, but I find myself during the years more and more criticizing, like, and not enjoying. So the minute that I go to see a piece that was good for me, then there is something about this person that will go with me. So I can give names from Israel that will repeat themselves in my studio, and I will say, like, you had this piece here of Loving Arab, and by Hillel, and I think that the way he approached text, and I feel that in general, when choreographer that uses text, which is good and accurate and not too obvious and not telling me everything and makes me laugh, to go to a dance show and laugh for me is extreme. It's not a movie, it's not stand-up comedy, and so to laugh from dance is a lot for me. So this is stuff that moves me a lot. I was a few years ago very, very curious about Meg Stewart, the way she moves her creations, and I was very, very lucky to work with her musician for 3 years in a row. Just because I was admiring her, I started listening to him, and we connected, and I asked him if he wanted to create music for us. And I took a workshop of her, and experiencing it on my body made me understand that, I don't know if it made me understand, but I could understand that I would not be able to create this kind of pieces. And in the same hand, I was very happy that I will continue doing what I know how to do. But it did give me a lot of ideas of how to direct improvisation. But usually, in a very ignorant way, I stay with my own world. Like, I feel that the minute that I see something, it affects me too much in a way that it can be in my process, and then, yeah, it's not mine, so I can't do it. Not because I'm imitating or taking like this right, it's because I can't do it because I'm not this person. So I will be more moved by music, and anything that comes, like any information that will come to my head, but not specifically a specific choreographer. Pina Bausch is like something that I admire, and I watched many videos, and I watched the movie, and I love the style of it, but also it took me a while to love it. I feel that the older that I became, I started to love it more because it's human beings, and I didn't look for something to be very beautiful. And I love Batsheva, like many others. Like I feel that Ohad Naharin is one of a kind. I admire his way of composing, and I watched many pieces in the beginning of my career, and I'm sure that it's somewhere in my head in the desire to create for many.
Well, thank you for coming, and if there's a moment, casually as we're exiting, you can connect with Dafi.
Thanks a lot for having me here, and
Yeah.
in such a welcoming